Isn't this amazing? To have the waves crash in front of your very room. This is my room. Oh, this is so beautiful. So beautiful. Hello everybody. Today I'm in Saint Lucia. It's one of the islands in the string of pearls lined up along the eastern Caribbean coast. And it's a surprising island. I found this very beautiful estate, a hotel or a resort run by a family. And when I checked in, I was surprised as to how beautiful it is and how well appointed the rooms are. So this is, it comes with a kitchenette, and look at how beautiful the rooms are. And of course, being a Caribbean island, the most beautiful scene of all is the sunset. Just here, as you can see, out right along the coast, and the sound of the crashing waves. Joining me today is an amazing man who actually owns this resort. Colin, really lovely to meet you.
It's a pleasure to meet you as well, Emmanuel.
And thank you very much for spending this morning with me to give me a sense of this beautiful resort that you own, but also something about your life and about this amazing country, Saint Lucia, which only recently saw its first Olympic winner, Julian Alfred, who is the world's #1 100 meters and one of the top 200 meters. This is just an island of 170,000 people, just slightly smaller than Singapore, which is where I come from, and yet it punches above its weight in terms of the amazing people that have come out of this island. You were telling me about writers who had won the Nobel Prize, and then the economics.
Derek Walcott, he's a Saint Lucian, won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1992. He was a professor at Boston University, also sometimes like at Harvard. But when he came home, he actually stayed at the Villa Beach Cottages at my property.
Right.
So he was actually inspired. He wrote some of his...
Go on, yeah.
He wrote some of his poetry here. And he was a painter as well, so actually I have some of his original paintings in my office.
He wrote some of his poetry here in this resort.
Yes, whilst he was, yes. So
what an amazing story that, this is like the Raffles Hotel of Saint Lucia. Keep going.
So, when he won the Nobel Prize in Literature, I was sitting close to him on the wall here, and, we were discussing the whole point of culture. And there's a little offshore island. It actually has a very unfortunate name. It's called Rat Island, but there are no rats on that island. It was named by an English sailor at some point because it had a coconut tree sticking out at the end, and maybe the silhouette looked like a rat. But he wanted to do something with that island, like an artist colony. And actually the chairman of Boston University came to the island, and they went across. And the idea was to build an educational complex and invite world-famous writers, musicians, painters who would have a place to actually work on the next masterpiece. And then students would go across and learn from these grand masters. So that was the concept. Unfortunately, he tried to raise finance. He actually did a play on Broadway called Cape Man with Paul Simon. But the play didn't actually make too much money, so that didn't work out. And then he was trying to collaborate with another guy who I met personally, and he said, "Colin, would you like to meet this guy?" And he said, "This is Arthur Miller." And I was shaking Arthur Miller's hands.
Arthur Miller, can you imagine? Yeah, keep going.
I wasn't thinking of Death of a Salesman. I'm thinking those hands have been on Marilyn Monroe, maybe the way I think, right? But it was amazing that, I spent time with Derek. But as a Saint Lucian, I'm also very proud of the fact that we have another Nobel Prize winner. So Arthur Lewis won the Nobel Prize for Economics in 1979. And he studied at the London School of Economics, but he actually developed a new form of what they call development economics, which a lot of countries, even Singapore, maybe has utilized some of the thing. And one of his fundamental quotes, which I love, says, the fundamental cure for poverty is not money, but knowledge education. So you educate a population, and you see actually Singapore actually focused a lot of education, and you see that the rule of law played a very critical part in that country and in development. And as you said, even though it's about the same size as Saint Lucia, but what has made Saint Lucia unique is the fact that we are, like Singapore in many ways, multicultural. So a number of influences. So my grandfather, the one that bought here, he's of Indian heritage, but he was born on the island. The Indians came because of the British colonial days after slavery, because they wanted to continue the plantations, and they were given that option after the 5-year contract to either get a piece of land or free passage back to India. His father chose to take the piece of land. And he was a pioneer in the hotel industry. He actually created the first major hotel called the Villa Hotel. And then he bought this land from a friend in 1957. But in 1958, the Americans, who had an air base on the island called Beanfield, were leaving, and they were selling the buildings on the base. And he actually bought 2 wooden officers' houses from the U.S. government, drove them up, put them here on the beach, and this is how the Villa Beach Cottages started.
Let's go out a bit and take a quick look at the place. It's
Absolutely.
so beautiful, right? So what you're saying is that this entire resort used to be part of the U.S.
Well, it wasn't part of the U.S. base. It was the buildings on the base were put here. So the U.S. actually had 2 bases on the island. They had the air base, where the international airport is called Heronora now, which was Beanfield, and up in Rodney Bay, they had the submarine station. So they had 2 bases on the island. So when the air base was closed down and the submarine station, the buildings, he bought them and he actually put them here on the beach.
So the location itself carries the history of the country.
Yes.
You know, that the fact that the Americans were here means that it was part of World War II, where
Absolutely.
the German U-boats were
coming near the island, actually.
and shooting at...
Right. People forget the United States has 3 borders: Canada, Mexico, and the Caribbean.
Yes.
So you must always protect the interests of the Caribbean. And we actually, the major incident we had during the Second World War was a German submarine came into the Castries Harbor, bombed 2 British merchant vessels, the Lady Nelson and the M. Tata, killed over 40-something people. And our response was 10 local guys who were part of the colonial army and some police tried to shoot the submarine with some pistols. So he got away, but at least we tried.
They were trying to shoot the submarine down using pistols. Can you beat that? You know, Colin, your own family is a story in itself.
Yes.
Right? I'm looking at you. You are part, you know, your entire heritage is it carries the colonial history in
Absolutely.
itself, right? So your grandfather was Scottish.
No, well, my grandfather on my father's side was English. Right?
I'm sorry, yeah.
And that's where the name Hunt comes from.
Yes,
so
Colin Hunt.
He was an Englishman. He was sent to the Caribbean. He actually first landed in Barbados, but then he was sent to the family here to manage a plantation in Dennery. Then he married an African woman. So that is where my grandfather, Marvin Hunt, came out of. And then my father, right, who obviously then married my mom, who was on the Indian side. But my father's mom was also part Carib, which was the indigenous population on the island before Christopher Columbus. I never quite understood how they could say Christopher Columbus discovered a place when their people already living there. And the Portuguese and the Spanish, when they came to the Caribbean, they called the tribes they found Caribs, where the word Caribbean comes from, in Arawak. That was not the true name. The true name were the Kalinago people. So my grandmother was Carib. Plus, I also have French ancestry thrown in for a good mix. So I always joke with people and I say that I'm a Heinz 58. But that is the uniqueness of the Caribbean, is that that fusion of cultures has created a blend. And you said it earlier, we punch above our weight. Whether it's literature, academics, whether it's sports with athletes. I mean, Julian Alfred has made Saint Lucia very proud.
Amazing, yes.
As a, woman winning the 100-meter gold medal. But, we've had music, Bob Marley, right? I saw a video recently in a Japanese singing Bob Marley word for word. So it shows you that a small archipelago of islands with a small population can really have a major impact on the world.
And I want to just take that conversation further, right? And then there is you, right? You trained to be a doctor in the University of London.
Right.
And then you chose to come back
Yes.
to an idyllic island where the per capita GDP is about 12,000 US, which is pretty good. It's actually an entry point for middle income, right? But nothing, no industry in this island. There's just tourism mostly, and then you came back,
Right.
and you gave up what could have been a lucrative career.
Yes.
Give me the spiel on that.
Well, a couple of things. One, you know, I've always, as a young boy growing up, I love my island. I mean, I grew up on a beautiful island and I'm blessed in many ways. And my grandfather, who was really a pioneer, he was a self-made man. His father died when he was 13 years old. He left the village of Soufre to come up to the city, Castries, to work. And then he became an entrepreneur. He sold everything from nails to Rambler motor cars to Hillman Imps and Peugeot, as well as the brands like Whirlpool and so on. And then he went into the hotel industry. Now, I grew up in a hotel, but I really had no intention of going into the hotel industry. I saw my parents get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, close down a restaurant at 1 o'clock in the morning. I thought that's not quite a good lifestyle for me. So when I qualified in London, I had to make a decision whether I wanted to continue. And then I thought, well, let me go back to my little island and see whether this is my long-term career. Because in the end, it's about quality of life. And I can tell you, even though you don't have a lot of money on this island, you can have a very good quality of life. And I think that is one of the things that drew me back. I wanted to make a contribution to my island as well. And also, I thought that I would enjoy life better being here than possibly the rat race of London. So when I came back, I took over this property. I mean, there were air-based buildings here. And I had a vision of what this property could look like. I had never had any background in construction, but I've mixed concrete. And I'm really I'm a Dublin architect. So I've all the gingerbread and the fretwork that you see, right? That's my inspiration, right? To me, it's about creating and leaving a legacy. So we all pass away and leave it all behind. But to me, human beings, we want to leave something behind, whether it's our children or whether it's some physical structure. So I'm very proud when I look around now and I see the physical manifestation of these dreams of what this property could be like.
You know, the magic of it is the property itself and what you've done with it, but also you as the owner who has a story to tell in your own right, and being part of history, and just the laid back, welcome culture of Saint Lucia.
Right.
Just going back to this point, because I'm from Singapore, we all caught up with being the best, and we like getting to the top of the rankings, the best this, the best that, but we don't have two Nobel Prize winners.
Right.
We just recently had our first Olympics gold medalist, who was a swimmer.
Right.
And very interestingly, the similarity there is that when a country spends enough time, when enough of its people are caught up with the same areas where they want to excel in, you will always see someone pop up, right? So if I were to ask you, what was Julian Alfred's secret?
Right.
What would you say it was?
I think again, when you grow up in Saint Lucia, you are the king or the queen of your kingdom. There is nobody superior or inferior to you. And that's an attitude that Saint Lucians have generally. So what happens is whatever area that you're passionate in and you can excel in, usually if you put the effort and the work into it, usually manifests itself. So Julian's story was, she was a young girl who had talent. A local coach noticed her and whatever and encouraged her. She actually almost gave up at one point when her father died. But again, the community surrounded her and the community said, look, you have talent, use it. She actually left the island at age 14 to go to Jamaica, which is the powerhouse when it comes to athletics and so on. And she got some very good coaching. And then she went to the United States where she was in Texas University. And then again, but the foundation of that, where she is now to become an Olympic champion, really comes from the culture of this island. Where, as I said, Saint Lucians all over the world have excelled, right? There are professors in universities in the UK, in the United States. We have musicians that are world famous. And sometimes it's hard to define, but as I think what a lot has to do with is, as I said, is that ethos of knowing that you are unfortunately in the world, people are classified. And we are told that some people are lesser than others. But in Saint Lucia, we are no lesser or superior than anybody else, which gives us that drive to achieve whatever we decide we want to do.
And in traveling through the Caribbean islands, and then if you don't look out for it, they all look the same. They all look beautiful. They all look like they're the rump end of the colonial era. And yet, there's one little magic that distinguishes Saint Lucia
Yes.
from the rest of the
Yeah.
Caribbeans, and that's economics.
Yeah.
You were telling me that the fact that Saint Lucia had banana plantations instead of sugarcane
Yes.
made a lot of a difference.
Yes, the main reason is when we went before post-colonialism, we actually had a very visionary leader. His name was John Compton. He was actually knighted Sir John Compton. And he was the one actually who took us into independence in 1979. And he quickly realized that two things have to happen to a population. You have to educate them. So he built a number of schools on the island. He was very good friends with Pierre Trudeau of Canada, and together they built a school called the Castries Comprehensive School, where the kids today still wear red and white uniforms. But it was a technical school. But the key really was that he understood that we needed to have a crop that was versatile. And so he really pushed bananas. And at one stage, we went from a society where we grew sugarcane to bananas. And the reason bananas were successful is that it's a crop that basically a banana takes 9 months to grow. And if you cut it, there's what they call a rhizome, and 9 months later, you have a new bunch of bananas. If a hurricane comes and wipes down the entire crop, 9 months later, you're back into production. So at one stage of our history, we had 2,500 farmers. But the key was that they owned the land that they were farming on. They were not working for a big plantation or a big owner or a big company like you see in some of the Latin American countries. So they were able to leverage that land because they were now landowners and use the monies that they could generate from financing through banks and so on to send the kids to school.
These are small farmers.
Yeah, these are small independent farmers with 5 acres and 10 acres. And what happened was that the kids got access to education. So the lawyers, the doctors, the engineers, they grew out of the banana class. And therefore this island took off, because the most important factor for any country is a strong, powerful middle class. Once you create a powerful middle class, it gives everybody the opportunity to move on up. Is when you see the disparity in the world where you have the very rich and the very poor and very little in between. That's where you see the inequality and all the social ills that go along with that. But Saint Lucia was very good. So when we lost our preferential treatment with bananas because of WTO and globalization, and Chiquita got access into the UK market, we went from 2,500 farmers to 500 farmers in 2 years. So that caused serious economic damage. But again, John Compton understood that you have to find other industries. The island lent itself naturally to tourism, obviously a beautiful tropical island, plus you had people that were welcoming and friendly. So we shifted into tourism, and really tourism is a tool. It can actually create serious socio-economic development. And then the spin-offs, because tourism is a central hub. So for example, we now have over 1 million extra people coming to this island every year. 750,000 cruise ship passengers, and maybe over 350,000.
160,000 people, 170,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So think about that. You have people to feed. So how do you feed the 1 million extra people that are coming in? Farmers.
And then industry
and the other industries that develop out of it. So that's a good thing in terms of tourism, is that there's sort of a number of satellite industries that have developed as a result of it. Also, the farmers now can diversify and grow other crops besides bananas, whether it's tomatoes or ginger or whatever. And we've also realized that the key is not the raw material, it's the end product. So you're now starting to see, although we have cocoa growers, a number of chocolateurs are developing on the island, right? And even with our other property, because we have another property called La Dauphine Estate, the plan is to build a chocolate factory because the value is in the end product.
You know, Colin, just listening to you, we just not just talked about history, we also talked about ethnicity, and we talked about economic development. And every point that you made about how a country grows through a transition, a country as small as Saint Lucia, when I got off the plane, I didn't expect anything. I didn't expect to learn anything from this, from coming here. And then I meet Colin, and then I stay in this beautiful resort that he owns, and we have conversations that takes us to the very edges of how economics needs to develop in order to create a successful country. Colin, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Yeah, cheers.